Ruby, will you come forward? I'm going to give you a little introduction, but Ruby, we learned of each other back a while ago, not too long ago, and I heard about you before. You've spoken before. You have such a unique story to tell, and we are honored that you are here. You're all the way from New Berlin. You're originally from the Rockford, Illinois area. The clock's on the wall. You've got a good hour to talk and tell your story. We're going to put you up here by the mic. You got a PowerPoint presentation, and you've got a unique story of what it was like. So you take us back to 1967. Let's everybody welcome our speaker, Ruby.
Where would you like it?
I think just... Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I want to thank all my brothers, my family, and George.
You got to put that mic right up there all the time.
I am Ruby Scheving, and I was a Army nurse in Pleiku, Vietnam from February 67 to February 68. I was born and raised in the Rockford area. My hometown was Seward, and that was a town of 200 people. So I went to schools there, local schools, and went to nursing school in Rockford, at Rockford Memorial Hospital, a 3-year nursing program. When I finished with my nursing school, spent about a year and was just kind of restless, so I decided that I could use my nursing skills, serve my country, and see the world. So I went into the Army recruiter, and I said, "Hi, I'm a nurse, and I'd like to go to Vietnam." And he said, "Sign here." So I signed up, and my mother had an absolute fit. She says, "Well, you can't do that." I said, "Sure I can, I already did." So after that, things moved along pretty quickly. I got my orders for Fort Sam Houston, where I went for my 6 weeks basic training. You could see how tough it was. We did gas masks. We learned how to use that kind of equipment. And so we were there for 6 weeks learning how to be soldiers. After that, I went to my first military hospital, and that was William Beaumont Hospital in El Paso, Texas. There, I just processed getting ready for Vietnam, had 4 wisdom teeth removed, and had all of this right before I went on leave. Looked like chubby cheeks when I went. So when I was there, this was the holidays, Christmas, '66, and I met the love of my life. He was engineer, went to an engineer party, and I just said to everybody, "That's mine." So we were both on orders when we met. Combat engineer, he was taking troops over, and so he was leaving 2 weeks before me. And so when this was his second tour, he had also been to Vietnam in '63, '64. So he went over, and when he left, he said, "I'll find you a hospital near me." Boy, I was really impressed. So he did. So when I got there, I had gone home for a 2-week leave, and then made preparations to go to Vietnam. This is our summer uniform where they wrote on my orders exactly what I should wear, just in case I didn't know, and I didn't. So, we went out of O'Hare and flew to San Francisco, Travis Air Force Base, and flew over Alaska and into Saigon. Arriving there, the times seemed different, but I had gotten there in country on the 25th of February. So got into Saigon. It was a little warm there. Processed for a couple of days, and then was on a plane, a helicopter, flew to the 18th Surgical Hospital in Pleiku, Vietnam, where I was met by my chief nurse at 3 in the morning, and she says, "Hi, you're excess." I didn't know what that meant, whether I should get on the plane and go back home. But anyway, my husband was able to get me there by telling her, being an engineer, that he would pave her parking lot, which he never did, but it worked, so I got that. These are just some of the rooms we were in. We lived in wooden barracks. The bottom floor was where the nurses were. We slept in cots with the mosquito netting. These are just other of the girls that lived there, and then the doctors lived on the top floor above us. So we were very close to the hospital, and this is a view of our hospital. The helipad was obviously on the top, so we had what we called the Bridge of Hope that led from the chopper pad to the 18th Surgical Hospital, whether you walked over that bridge or you were carried over. You were sent down to the hospital where you were, it was triage to find out who was going to go for that was the most important. This is me on my cell phone. We had approximately 60 beds, and as you can see here, our administrative personnel, 19 doctors, 16 nurses, and a lot of EMS, people in charge of the lab, x-ray, and also for the pharmacy. We had litter bearers, and so that's pretty much our combat support group. This was the area between the Quonset huts where we scrubbed. Now, I worked as a post-op nurse, so I did not work in the emergency room, but this is where they scrubbed. In these Quonset huts, there were 2 different rooms in there. One had 2 surgical beds that they did surgery on. The other room had 3, 2 of which were for general anesthesia, and then one for where they were doing less surgeries where they didn't need as much anesthesia. And then they would, most of the wounds that came in were extremities, to include hands and feet. A lot from claymore mines, punji sticks, from automatic weapons, grenades, and then the other next one were abdominal wounds. The abdominal wounds were such that most of those we left open so that they would heal from the inside out to keep us some from infections. And then also chest wounds. Chest wounds were also a big thing, a lot of chest tubes. And then there were also malaria. We had a lot of medical things. And those people usually ended up at Cameron Bay, out of the area, of the surgical area. These are just a couple of corpsmen that were ambulance drivers. That's our Bridge of Hope. One night we didn't have anything to do, so we had some pink paint, so we painted it pink. That was not the military way, but that's what we did. This is me looking busy, and these were just the beds. We took care of Vietnamese, we took care of Mikey soldiers, we took care of, I only recall one POW that we had. He was kept in the back with an MP. When I went to work the next day, he wasn't there, so I don't know where he went. No. So this is just some of the people. This is Bobby Goldthorpe. She was there. Bobby decided to stay another year, which wasn't always a good idea for nursing. It was just, it's too many things going on, too much happening. And I remember when the patients came out of surgery, you could literally see them count arms, legs. And the first question that they always ask is, where's Joe? They want to know where their buddy was. And in many instances, we didn't know. If they didn't come in on the same chopper, we had no idea where they were until someone from their unit would come in and let them know where Joe was. I remember a situation where there was a full colonel, he was in, had 3 chest tubes in. So I said, okay, I'm going to support your chest, and you're going to deep breathe and cough, and then so we can get these chest tubes out. He looked at me and he says, I don't take orders from second lieutenants. And I said, well, I'm sorry, sir, but you lost your rank when you came in the door. So he did what I said, and he got the chest tubes out. We also, the next slide. Okay, this is just, this was our officers club, and a lot of time was spent in there, and amazingly enough, you could be there, and a lot of people had a lot to drink, but when you heard those choppers come in, everybody was alert and responsive. When we had what we called a push, that was a large number of casualties coming in at the same time from the battlefield. And of course, we had people like George Vanda, our combat medics, who were on the ground, who actually put on tourniquets, stopped the bleeding, put on the pressure on the dressings, start IVs, give them pain meds, just to get them onto the choppers. The choppers usually carried 4 to 6 casualties, depending upon the number of litters that were on the plane. So these are some of our relaxing things. Reading the newspaper outside, sunbathing. And I'm standing here by a chopper, but General Piers was our commanding general, and he did not want nurses flying around sightseeing. So it was discouraged completely to be doing that. Sometimes you felt like he could get as many soldiers killed in the field, but you didn't want to get a nurse killed, because then you'd end up with everybody upset with everything. So but it was one of those situations where we were very, very proud of our job that we were doing. These soldiers were coming in and in horrible shape, and you did what you could do. In this 18 surgical hospital, the patients did not stay very long in our area because we had to get them ready, stabilize them, and send them back either to another evac hospital, to send them to Saigon, out of country, depending upon the severity of their wounds. So that was important to just keep the areas open so that when you had the next push, you would be ready for it. You never knew. A lot of times the dust-up pilots would call in and say sort of the condition of some of the casualties, let you know how many, and just so you could be somewhat prepared. And our doctors were very, very good. There's a book that one of them wrote, Soldiers Saving Soldiers, and it's about my hospital, the 18 Surgical Hospital, by a doctor who was there. He saw the conditions of these people, and they did really, really tremendous things to help save them. In the area where we were, they had the mountain yards, the indigenous people in the highlands, and I think everybody from our hospital was invited to a rice wine ceremony. So at this rice wine ceremony, first they'd dribble some blood, chicken blood, over your feet, and then you'd sit hunched down and drinking rice wine through a straw out of a great big jar or jug. And then when you finished, you got a bracelet like this, one of the copper bracelets. So, and then afterwards, you were served chicken that had been cooked very well. and then they chopped it, so it just went, everything was, you had a bone in every single bite. But these people were very nice. They always wanted cigarettes, so you didn't need to speak the same language. You just knew what it was, right? This is then my boyfriend, Gary, and this was one of the times that he had come to visit. He would come in a Jeep, and he'd have gunners in the back, and they had automatic weapons just firing the whole way, whether there was anything coming or not, but they were busy. And I always say when he came, I didn't see him for an hour. He'd be in the bathroom. He didn't have a bathroom, so he was in flushing the toilet and taking a shower. He was just so excited about having those kind of commodities which he didn't have. That again is our pink bridge. This was in late December in 1967. The 18th Surgical Hospital moved. I think it went to Quang Tri, and then we moved to the 71st Evac, which was right close in Pleiku to where we were. The 18th Surgical Hospital had been supportive of the 4th Division base camp and most of the combat units in the 2 Corps area in the Central Highlands. So then we moved to the 71st Evac, and it was pretty much the same thing. Meanwhile, while I'm treating soldiers, so that was our Christmas card that we sent. And meanwhile, while I was helping to take care of soldiers, my husband was out at the 4th Division base camp. That's where the 20th Engineers were. And he was trying to keep roads cleared, trying to fix bridges that were blown up constantly so that we could get our supplies through, so that we could get the trucks through, to make sure that the troops had food. And so this was a head view of that. There was also Pleiku Air Base that was close by. If we had casualties that had come into our hospital that may have been in a helicopter crash with lots of burns, they would actually send some of these soldiers, if there were enough of them, on a C-140 back to Brooke Army Medical Center to make sure that they got those burns cared for. But what he was doing then, and I didn't get it all in there, but he was also planning for a wedding. So we were married in Pleiku at the Air Force Chapel, and we went through crossbows as our little entranceway rather than rifles. And it's engineer tradition for the bride and groom to ride on a bulldozer from the place of the wedding to the reception. So this was on a flatbed trailer, so it wasn't like we were just bouncing along. And I had had my dress made in Singapore on an R&R. My bridesmaid and the 2 attendants, they sent for their dresses out of the Sears catalog with the dyed shoes to match. So this was, we had the reception at the NCO club, and a lot of the soldiers there actually took the dishes. It was a big thing to buy china over there. And so they took the china out of the dishes, used them at our reception, and then boxed them back up and sent them to their wives or whoever. So they re-gifted them. So right after the reception then, we got on a plane with a Vietnamese general. We flew to Saigon, and we watched the fighting in the streets. This was during Tet. This was February 28th, 1968, and we were on the top of the roof looking at the fighting in the streets. And you could always, just the noises, the sounds, it was really, really hard to hear all of that was going on. This was a postcard that my husband stayed in close touch with his dad. And we invited his dad to the wedding, but he said that the Hotel Hilton was closed. So then from there, in 2 days, we were able to get out, and we then started a 41-day honeymoon. So we didn't come back to the United States with the same grief that so many of you soldiers suffered when you came home. People disrespecting you, spitting on you, treating you so badly. So we first went to Tokyo. We spent some time in Hawaii, San Francisco, Las Vegas, and then on to my parents in my town of 200 people. All 200 came to our reception. So my husband, after the reception, he stood in front of my parents' house and he said, looked up the street, he looked down the street and he said, the apartment building I was raised in had more people than this. Our next stop was New York City, and he was right. It was like a war zone there as far as I was concerned in my little small mind. And these were, this was just pictures of the kids. We had Kristen and Michael. They were both born at Fort Lee, Virginia. That's where we came back to our first duty station. And I worked nights at the hospital because I was the new person. And so my husband hated the hours. I would come home, he would leave, and he said, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I think you can just be a stay-at-home mom. At the time I was pregnant, and the military was very concerned about that. For a woman to have a baby on active duty, that just wasn't happening. So had I got into labor, I think I just would have been honorably discharged. But I was, I did what they wanted me to do. I got out on the 31st of October, fulfilled my two-year commitment, and then on the 24th of November, my daughter Kristen was born. We had another child then at Fort Lee, and from there, we had orders. It was a short tour for Gare to go to Korea. And he said somewhere in his records it must say that he liked rice, because this was his third Asian tour. So he went over, he brought us over, and we then, our youngest son Stephen was born in Korea. And I know when he was going to middle school, kids would always say, well, you don't look Korean. No, he wasn't. And then this is just more pictures of us and with the kids and just life at home. This was when we went to a dedication in 1993 of the Women in Memorial Service of America. And at the time, we had taken this picture that's here with myself and some other women in uniform. And that particular picture ended up in the official program when we went there. And the chances of that happening are pretty slim. Actually, it's 1991 instead of 93. In 1993 was the dedication of Vietnam Women's Memorial, and my husband took us to that too. So at that time I went, Michael had just graduated from West Point, and we were there for that celebration. For this celebration, the Military Women's Memorial, my husband brought my daughter from Spain, he brought my son from Texas, my other son from Marietta, Georgia, where he was going to school, and we all got together for this dedication. It was quite an event. And just recently had the opportunity to be at the 30th anniversary with Diane Carlson Evans, who is the founder of the Vietnam Women's Memorial. It took her 10 years to get this memorial up, and it was one of those things where these guys from Chapter 1 were very instrumental in helping her to get this memorial built. They donated money, they wrote letters, and they did a lot to help the whole process happen. And that just doesn't happen by itself. So we just went to that on November 11th in 2023. These are pictures of just my family. I have the 3 children, and I have 6 grandchildren, of whom I'm very, very proud. I also had the opportunity, some speaking engagements, to go to their schools. Charlie is with me tonight, and I've been to his school in middle school for 4 or 5 years of going on Veterans Day. Have a couple of daughters at Divine Savior Holy Angels, and one of them had invited me to be the speaker at their school for the I Am Not Invisible, of which Marsh is a part of this organization. So this is just to make people aware that women did serve. One of the notes that Kristen had given me was that 265,000 women served in the Vietnam era. 11,000 of those served in Vietnam. 90% were nurses. So there were a lot of women in country that did a lot of things besides just nurses. And these are just a couple other events. The I Am Not Invisible has been to the Bucks game. It's been to the Brewers game. It's been to the Packer. We were there not for a game, but it was at Lambeau Field. And so just making awareness. Education is where it's at. We have to educate our kids so they don't know anything about the military service, because I don't feel our schools do enough to promote what's going on. These are just several other pictures. This was where we received a check from Honor Flight. This was my Honor Flight, and I happened to get the quilt. Every flight, someone gets the quilt, and so happened to be me. I happen to know the lady that makes them. Also had the privilege of being with Ryan Braun on the field with him. I have his jersey with his name on it. Very proud of that. Our Wisconsin Vietnam vets, we do a lot of parades. Obviously, since Chris has on a St. Patrick's Day tie, must have been St. Patrick's Day. I want to thank all of you very much for coming. This is a picture. I have no idea why we had balloons in Vietnam, but I'm sure we were celebrating something. So, a moment.
Go ahead. We got a question and answer period after this, but what else would you like to say? We're going to give you a chance to have a concluding comment, but what are you going to say now?
So you don't think I'm finished yet, right?
Well, we got plenty of time. You gave an indication that you're trying to wrap things up. You've got plenty of time.
I don't know. Should we just open it up? Does anybody have any?
Excuse me. Do you have final things? Otherwise, I'm going to take it. I'll take it from here as far as getting people to ask you questions. Do you have any other comments, or otherwise we can start with the questions?
No. I just want to say that I'm very, very proud of my military service. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I'm so pleased to have been a part. I'm honored and humbled to have served my country and to take care of all these soldiers who needed our help, our support, to come back home again. That's all they wanted to do. And I think as a female in a war zone, you are respected and that you're taken care of because people appreciate you for who you are. A round eye, being there with patients, and being like their mother, their wife, their girlfriend, their sister, and just somebody that they can look up to and feel comfortable. Also, a lot of, I didn't say anything, but I didn't see him when he was there, but people like entertainers like Bob Hope that spent so much time in the war zones, bringing the pretty girls, bringing the soldiers to this, and making it possible for them to be a part of this for a short period of time, just to get their mind off of it. Not everybody was able to do it, but a lot of people were, and it made a difference. I can truly say I'm honored to serve, and I would like to say, may God bless you, and may God bless America.
Okay, wait.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll have the question and answer period. Ruby, can you hear me from back here?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Okay, you told me over the phone, how many men did you actually treat in the 1 year you were there?
And I told you, I think then, that I don't really know. It wasn't anything that I kept account of. You just did what you had to do when you were doing it, and I don't know how many I served.
50, 80, 100?
Probably 100.
Okay. How many men perished in the care there of your unit that you couldn't save, that actually died in your nurses area there, roughly?
Okay. In the triage area, I don't know, because I was in the taking care of them after they came out of anesthesia. But there obviously were soldiers that didn't make it. They would get as far as the hospital. But we didn't keep them long enough, so we were never really able to keep a count, because they were only there for 5 or 6 days and then moved to another area just to make it so that we had the beds open. So from our perspective, I would say that we did not lose that many in that area, but there very well could have been many in the triage.
Psychologically, emotionally, describe the pressure that was on you and your other nurses dealing with this, seeing young men shot up, many of them fearful of dying. Describe that, how that was dealing with that on the battlefield as an emotional impact.
Well, Ken, as you very well know, we're all different. We all handle things differently. My perspective is different from other people's. I found that I just needed to keep it together to do my job. And I could do my job the best if I had it together. Of course, there were a lot of emotional... one of our nurses who had extended, she was engaged to a pilot, and his plane had been shot down. This was her second tour, and she went out on a litter. It's just one of those things that she had no idea. As it turned out, they ended up getting married. He was okay, but you just don't know. And there are some people that small things they can't handle, but they can handle the big things. There's other people that, you know, they see that you need a Band-Aid and they're already, you know, so it is emotional. It is. I didn't come home. I can truly say, and I knock on wood, that I don't have a Purple Heart, that I don't have disabilities. But my friends, a lot of them, it happens.
Did you rotate out with a group of nurses or individually when you left the country?
Individually with my husband.
Do you still keep in contact with any of them that you served with?
I do not. I think I say that I came home with a husband. We started a family. We had our own family. And I did not stay in touch, although I did go back to 2 reunions, one in Louisiana, and met up with people again. And, you know, what do you talk about? Oh, you know, how are you doing? And also went to one in D.C. And it was nice, I don't know if nice is the word, but to see these people again and just know that they were all right.
Tell us about on the photograph on the placemats and the press release, that's you in Washington, D.C., and that is the Nurses Memorial. Tell us about that.
Okay, went for that, and I was able to take my 3 children and my sister, and we went back for this occasion. because of Chapter 1, I was able to meet Diane Evans Carlson, who is the founder of the Vietnam Women's Memorial. And she is an honorary member, and so I was able to meet her at the hotel room when she came. The Chapter 1 it was our year to do the Veterans Banquet, and she was the keynote speaker. And it happened to be the same year that I was the Veteran of the Year. So it was something that was very special to me. It was like Diane came because I was there, which it was not the case. But so when we went back for the 30th anniversary, it was rewarding. I met a lot of people. While Diane was trying to get this memorial, it took her 10 years, she had people say to her, like, a woman's memorial on the mall? That would be like having Elvis Presley in the monument, Mount Rushmore. And she's like, seriously? They actually said that to her. And people were not willing to fund her. They just didn't want a woman's memorial. And she said, well, you have the wall, and that's for all that were killed in Vietnam, of which there are 8 women, 8 nurses on that wall. And then you have the 3 soldiers, the bronze soldiers, and they said, well, that can be for the women too. Well, it's 3 men, it's not the same. And then they also just tried to talk her out of everything, but she just kept pushing forward. And because of her perseverance, this worked. So she was back, the keynote speaker. She is loved by so many people and honored for all she did for women, for making it possible. Yes, Ken?
Ruby, we have more questions, and I'm going to ask for a show of hands. We'll pass the mic around. Time is on our side. So our ladies group from Fort Washington just read this book, and we've got a spokesman here. What question or comment do you have for our speaker?
Yeah, we're wondering, while you were in country, what were some creature comforts that you missed the most?
I'm sorry.
While you were in country.
Oh, what did I miss?
Yeah, what did you miss the most?
I guess I missed, although my mom was a big one for writing letters, so she'd write me letters, and, I put the wash out on the line today, and it was such a beautiful day, and it smelled so good when I brought it in, and those are the kind of letters that I got that I appreciated. I have a cousin that sent me carrots, and by the time that you got to Vietnam, nobody wanted to share my care package. You miss family. I think that's one of the biggest things is it's family. I think that's one of the biggest things.
Any more questions from your group here? Wait, okay, stand up.
Was there a patient that left a particular mark on you, a memory, whether the person survived or didn't survive, that you still think about that person today?
No, there isn't. But I did have one soldier that for some reason, he came back a second time to the hospital, and he told me if I ever got rid of that major, that we could get together. But like I say, we never really got attached. We didn't get attached to our patients because they weren't there that long. They were pretty much just stabilizing and then moving on. We don't know if they got better or how things went for them.
Over here, John and Cindy Lindstedt are regular attenders. He's a naval officer. And you brought your daughter. She's been here before. And you're a registered nurse. Will you stand? Tell us again who you are and what question you have.
My name's Jennifer. I'm an NP with neurosurgery at Freighter, so I take care of a lot of trauma patients.
Okay.
So my question for you is, can you comment a little bit on what it was like transitioning from military, high acuity combat medicine back into civilian medicine as a newbie on the night shift?
Well, I think that's one of the things that this book, The Women, talked about was I didn't stay in nursing. So I didn't really have those kind of things. But for the nurses that stayed in nursing, they've been starting IVs, they've been doing cut downs, they've been doing this, they've been doing that. And all of a sudden you get back and people say, whoa, you can't do that. And it was pretty serious because this is what you'd been doing, this is what you'd been training to do. And then you come home and that's not acceptable in the hospitals.
Go ahead, just stand up. Stand.
In November of 1967, the hospital at Pleiku was in a serious push. And there were nurses from the 85th Evac Hospital that were sent to the hospital in Pleiku to help out. Upon finishing their duty, returning to the 85th Evac Hospital in inclement weather, their plane crashed and all on board died. Captain Orlowski, a nurse, but there were two male nurses as well, Jerome Olmsted of Clintonville, Wisconsin, and Kenneth Shoemaker of Kentucky. Do you remember that incident? Do you remember working with them? I
do not remember that, but I know I just recently there was something that came about the 8 nurses on the wall. In addition to those, I didn't realize that there were 2 male nurses also in that flight that crashed.
There were 2 nurses from the 85th Evac Hospital that died in Vietnam.
Michael Clark, you spoke here at our group before. Tell us briefly where you served and what you did in the service. You spoke quite a few years ago and you're back in the area again. Michael Clark, tell us a little more about yourself.
I served in Vietnam from August of 1970 to August of 71. For the first 6-7 weeks, I was a medic with 101st Airborne Division, 326th Medical Battalion. After that, I transferred to the 85th Evac Hospital in Phubai, where I worked. My primary responsibilities were in the OR, but during the push, everybody was in the ER. I mean, chaplain's assistant, I mean, if you were a cook or even worked in the motor pool, pretty much everybody was there to help out. One question back here was, does one person stick out in your mind? And I can say that absolutely there's one that to this day brings me to tears. Sorry. After coming home, I went back to school and became a PA. I finished my career with 23 years in emergency medicine. And I will tell people that I worked with that 23 years in the ER doesn't equal 1 month in Vietnam. There's just no comparison.
George Banda, will you stand up, please? I'm coming through. Gangway, thanks. George, you served with the 101st Airborne. You spoke here quite a few years ago. Briefly tell us what you did over there. And if you have questions for Ruby, tell us, tell everybody again who you are and where you serve.
Good evening, everybody. My name is George Banda. I'm an Army veteran and a combat medic with the 101st Airborne Division. I was assigned to a recon unit, 8-man team, that we go out in the jungle. I was with the 101st up in I Corps, which is up pretty far north, up where the Marines were. So a lot of action up there. Saw a lot of combat and lost a lot of friends, So my job as a combat medic, obviously, to take care of my troops, take care of the guys, and that's what I did, or tried to do. You can not always be successful at it because you're in a combat situation, you're being shot at. Helicopters can't come in to take out the wounded, the seriously wounded, so there you're sick. Trying to calm them down, trying to talk to them, trying to keep them alive. And one of the most toughest things that I ever experienced was exactly that, is when there was no hope, you just talk to that person, give them encouragement, tell them you're going to go home, hang in there, you're going to be all right, you're going to be home with your mother and dad, or your wife, or your sister, you're going to have a great time when you get back, we'll get in touch again. Those are the kind of things that you say are the last things they hear. And hopefully those words that you're telling these young men, 19, 18, 20, that it gave them something to hold on to as they pass away. So thinking about what Ruby has gone through, and a lot of these Vietnam vets and other veterans, of course, went through combat, in a combat situation. Combat is hell, absolutely. And there's no way to simulate it in boot camp or in any other place. It's real. It's real and it's in your face. So, and I have to thank Ruby. I've known Ruby for a long time, and I love her dearly. I respect her, and I honor her. When I'm in her presence, I am humbled by her.
George didn't tell you, though, that he's a Purple Heart recipient and a Silver Star recipient. So he did his part.
George, you know Michael Clark, because he was 101st, you know each other. Okay. So what year were you over there?
I was there 69, 70.
Okay. Okay. More hands, folks. Time's on our side. We'll get to everybody.
Hi. It sounds like your to-be husband, you all were smitten from the get-go. How often was he able to come to visit you? And how did your parents feel about you getting married in Vietnam?
Obviously, I didn't listen very well to my mom, right? I mean, that was never an option. And we got to see each other maybe once a month, maybe twice a month. So it wasn't very often because he was a combat engineer. So his jobs also were very busy. He was in the boonies, and I was taking care of those that were in the boonies. So completely different. And then we have the added of this Agent Orange that was sprayed on everything so that we could get rid of the foliage, which we did. But now, 50, 60, 50, 55 years later, all of these veterans that are suffering from these horrific chemicals that were sprayed everywhere. And I would like to believe that our government was doing it so that we could see the enemy, but it's huge now in our society today, and with veterans that are suffering from those illnesses.
Ruby, my name's John Winstead. It's my daughter who had the first question for you. And you're about my age, and a lot of people in this room were young adults in Vietnam during the Vietnam era. And we understand what a difficult time it was for our country. And we bear the effects of that today. When people ask me about Vietnam, I did not go to Vietnam. I was in the submarine service. But people say, what was it like? I said, well, it's a whole picture. Basically, Vietnam was a very sad time for this country. And it was, the civilian world was upside down. You get over there, it's a nightmare. And it's just sad. And you, madam, are a bright star. I loved what you said tonight, your emotion, the cheer you brought, the help you gave those men. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you.
Raise your hand. More questions? Okay, I'm going to walk right back here. Ruby, we're going to wrap up fairly quickly, but I always ask speakers for their closing comments. We'll do that when we end, but we're not quite done yet.
Ruby, I'm just curious, how many surgical units like yours were in Vietnam? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. I just got this great map from Wally recently of all the places in Vietnam, but I don't know. There were a lot of them. You know, a lot of people would say, oh yeah, I went to, I never heard of it. So, you know, you were kind of wrapped up in what you were doing and your area that, I don't know how many there were, but there were a lot of units that that were open. Even like in the Two Corps area, there was an Australian doctor that was in Khartoum, which was a local area, and she was taking care of and had a clinic for the Montagnards, the Vietnamese, and we would from time to time go and help her out. Wound cleanings, dressings, just as community services to help others.
That was actually going to be my second question, so you answered. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm walking back. Any other hands here? We are coming your way. Coming your way. You got to speak up, folks. You got to speak up and stand up. They won't see you otherwise.
My name is Dave Stensel. I'd like to honor my wife's aunt, who was a physician at a college, and she found it in her heart she wanted to go to Vietnam. And it was hard for her, because being a woman at that time, but she did go take care of the men in Vietnam for a year.
She was at Da Nang.
In Da Nang, she was.
God bless her.
Da Nang.
What was her name?
She was a Cedarburg girl, and she went on to college in Madison, and then ended up being the doctor at the girls' college at Mount Holyoke in Massachusetts, and she wanted to go to Vietnam, and she asked to go, and they said, "Oh no, we don't take women. You cannot go." So she fought, and finally she got to go, and she was stationed in Da Nang.
What's her name?
Her name was Carol Eifler Craig.
I'm working my way back here. Coming through. Stand up and raise your hand because we can't see you otherwise.
I worked in a critical care unit at a large hospital in Milwaukee for over 20 years. Oh, can you hear me? Okay, and in my experience, we had everything we needed 24 hours a day. We never ran out of anything. In your experience over there, did you always have the antibiotics, the anesthesia, the dressings, the sterile gloves, the ventilators, everything that you needed, or were you ever trying to work without the things you needed?
You had to. I think the biggest thing that we ran out of was blood. And I saw occasions where I didn't think you could give blood of a different type to somebody that was a different type, but I saw it happen, and it's better to risk anaphylactic shock than it is death. So, and it seemed to work out. These young soldiers at 17 and 18 were so tough, and they just willed so many things that you didn't think were, that they could do. And but we did. We ran out of supplies. And like I recall a story from George Banda. He was one of these combat medics. He ran out of dressings. And so he was literally tearing his own shirt off to use for bandages, to stop the bleeding. So you did what you had to do until you could get the supplies. But actually, I don't know, there was borrowing too. Sometimes you just sort of borrowed from somebody else.
Hey, Ruby, I was wondering how many nurses were like you, fresh out of college, going straight into the medical field in Vietnam?
I think that most of us were right out of school. The ones in my area were, and I think that we had this initiative that this is what we wanted to do. We wanted to go over there, and I personally didn't know anything about Vietnam when I went from my little town to 200 people. But I knew this is what I wanted to do. And I don't think rewarding is the word, but it's one of those things where you can say, wow, I'm here. This is happening whether I'm here or not. And I can do what I can do while I'm here.
Many of you read this book, and many of you are nurses. speak or forever hold your peace. I'm walking forward. You've got a great opportunity with a room of about 140 people here to ask significant questions. The gentleman against the wall, raise your hand. He's filming this for Oshkosh Cable Network, Ken Walker. So, you have a question. Any nurses? I'm coming forward. Speak or forever hold your truth. In all seriousness, this is an important meeting here. Anybody else? Just raise your hand. Anybody else who read the book that has a comment or question on it?
What's the title of the book?
The women.
Time to do it. Move forward. This is perfect. Time is on our side. Normally we're running out of time. We've got time. Tell us again who you are, where you're from, and your question.
My name is Dina Peters from Grafton. First of all, thank you so much for your service. I would just like to get your take on this. For most of the war, when you came, early on in the war, when you came back, people kept saying, no women served in Vietnam. There were no women there. How did that make you feel? And secondly, when you came back, a lot of women weren't, I don't know if the correct word is, but allowed to go to get help or to get services because they really weren't considered veterans.
Well, I think for one thing, even with the men when they came back, there was a lot of problems getting the VAs to believe them, especially with things like PTSD. It'll go away. Just live with it. It'll be better. And they've made a lot of advances there. I feel that Zablocki in Milwaukee does a great job. I feel with women, it's coming. They are frequently having seminars and having get-togethers where women's health issues are coming forward. And so I think it's taken a long time. And this, I think, a lot of times it was the press that never said there were women there. And if you didn't say they were there, then they couldn't get killed. And I think that it's just one of those things. They reported, according to the press, they would think that that the men, we were winning the war. Well, we were never going to win this war. It wasn't winnable. I mean, it wasn't set up for us to win.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anybody else here, folks, as I come forward? Oh, you got to speak up, otherwise I can't see or hear you.
Okay, I think you said that you were only a nurse for a short period of time before you went to Vietnam. And so I'm assuming you didn't have a lot of experience with, major trauma. And so when you first went there, what was it like when you started seeing these people coming in with, abdominal wounds and missing limbs? And did you have other nurses that had experience to kind of help you? Because I can imagine it would have been pretty traumatic as a new nurse.
I was fortunate enough at my unit at the 18th Surgical Hospital. I had about 6 nurses that had been there for a solid year before, and they were tough. And so to be behind these people, and they pushed you along the way. They gave you a lot of good answers. If you had questions, they were there. So people that have your back, it just makes it so important to make your job work well.
So we're coming close to an end, and I'm going to put this lady on the spot. She's not going to like it, but what she has to say is vitally important. Hold on. Okay, hold on. This, once again, we introduced Renee Schreiner from Fort Washington, and we were on the phone, and she told me about being an Army WAC, the Women's Army Corps, and your experiences, and we don't get female speakers often. So just tell us quickly what you did as a female in the Army. Quickly, this is important.
I was an administrative specialist, admin specialist in Germany. I don't know which one to say. I worked for a group of warrant officers, and they were wonderful. I did meet several people that had come back from Vietnam, and now they were in Germany. So I did hear stories, because this was at the end of the Vietnam War.
Well, no, just your experience as a woman in the Women's Army Corps. We don't get many.
Well, I was an administrative specialist. I was a clerk typist. Being a woman, well, we were one of the first groups that did go to Germany, the WACs. It wasn't it wasn't always a pleasant experience. A lot of people thought that when we were out of uniform, they thought we were somebody's daughter. A lot of sexual harassment. That was horrible, yeah, including the boss that I had until I turned around and said, said a few words to him. But there were the warrant officers were wonderful. They treated me like their daughters. I don't know what you want me to say. I did a lot of traveling, and I did work with a lot of people that had been in Vietnam at one time.
And how did the men treat you, the other veterans? You told me on the phone something about that.
Not so well all the time. Some of them took you under, they were very nice to you, but some of them, it was just because, I could tell you about when I went to basic training, AIT. I had AIT at Fort Polk, and there was one time, there were a group of us, we went to the PX, and I'm not kidding, we were followed by 17 men. They just followed us all over the place. We were told never to go anywhere alone for that reason, because it was highly unusual at that time to have a lot of women in the military. It was just, I don't know what else I told you on the phone.
You told us enough, and we want you to join the Rose Arms American Legion here. Thank you. We don't have that many women speakers. I'm working my way up. Any room for more hands? Otherwise, we're going to conclude things pretty quickly. We've got another hand over here. Bear with me. Bear with me.
At the 85th, when we needed blood, we had one of those 3x5 index card files, and we had guys with rare blood types listed in there. And if we needed blood, we'd call the MPs, and they'd go get these guys out of bed in the middle of the night and tell them that they're coming in to donate blood.
Coming forward. I've got one more section here. Your family, any comments or questions from you folks? Okay, good. Stand up.
Oh, it wasn't, it was more just like a couple of questions I had. Actually, you talked about, I had a question. How often did you see your boyfriend, like Dad? Mm-hmm. And like that story about the telephone, field phone. So like when you, and like how often did you get communication from home? Because didn't you also talk to your parents on the field phone?
I had one Mars call, and I called my mom. She was so scared, and I'm like, okay, Mom, they're going to ask something, and then you're going to say over. Oh, sorry. So we would call, and hello, Mom, over, and then there'd be dead silence, and then somebody'd say, you have to say something and then say over, and she just never got it. It just didn't work. But this is funny. I used to call my husband, or at that time my boyfriend, and we went through 5 different operators. And I have this written down. So then we would start out, and the first one was Pleiku Army. Please, I always said please. And then another operator would pick up, and then it would be famous, please. The next one was flight, please. And then they would pull another switch, superior, please. And then finally the S3. So then when we would hang up, each of the operators would say, good night, Ruby. Good night, Ruby. Good night, Ruby.
I didn't realize this, Ruby, till fairly recently, being still a young man. I'm still learning. But at the time, as an infantryman in Vietnam, a lot of times you didn't have a lot to look forward to. But when you got hurt or injured, people like Ruby taking care of you, that was a lot. And we thank you.
Thank you, George.
Ruby, come on. Come and be here. away from the mic, we don't have any slides. So come on up a little further where everybody can see you. We're closing out the evening now, and you can stay behind and get autographs on your placemats or your books or anything like that. But Ruby, now you've got a room of 140, 150 people here. What are your closing comments here since your experience of sharing with us and going back to 1967 and 68? What are your final thoughts you want to leave with everybody tonight?
I want to thank you all very much for listening to my story. We all have one. They're all different. None of us are alike. And I just appreciate your being there, listening to what I have to say. Sometimes I'm a little wishy-washy and don't always say what I'm really wanting to say. But I really appreciate it. I have made such great friends since I have joined this organization that I belong with Chapter 1. And Renee, I think you ought to join. It's a very positive thing. Initially, I did not want to join. I did not want to hang out with a bunch of men. And then well, see ya, gone home. And that's what I do. We hang out. And, but I know these guys have my back. I've never had any doubt. And I've always been treated very well in the military. And I'm just very pleased to be here. I'm glad to tell my story. And may God bless America.
Thank you so very much.